Hello and welcome to Good Evening Britain, a Force for Good's weekly show coming to you live from our studios here in the heart of the great British city of Glasgow, with me, your host, Alistair McConnachie. We are broadcasting on all our digital platforms throughout the United Kingdom and across the world. We're bringing you quality pro-UK comment and analysis every Wednesday from 7 until 8 p.m. on Facebook, on YouTube, on X, and also for the first half hour, we will be on TikTok. And at 7:30, we've got a guest coming in, a new guest, somebody who's not been on the program before. That's Jason Lloyd Davies of the United in Britain campaign, which is based in Wales and which is a response to the Yes Cymru grassroots group, which is for breaking up the United Kingdom. United in Britain is for keeping Wales within the Union. So we'll be speaking to Jason about what his organisation does and especially how he thinks the forthcoming Senate elections are going to play out in Wales, where it could be a two-horse race between Plaid and Reform, or will Labour come through and dominate once again? So we'll be speaking with Jason about those things at the bottom of the hour. Really looking forward to that, actually, because we don't often have guests on from Wales, and so it's really good to hear from somebody else from another part of our United Kingdom who is as determined as the rest of us to keep the UK together, because he, like all sensible people, realise that there's strength in unity and there's progress in the solidarity of all the British people of the British Isles working together in some form with our common interests at heart. And so that's what we'll be talking around with our man, Jason, at the bottom of the hour. Excuse me. Now, also lots to talk about. Quite a busy week here in Glasgow. Of course, we had a disaster, really. Well, thankfully nobody was hurt, but we had a bad fire just outside Central Station. And goodness me, if there is to be any saving grace, it was that the fire did not spread into the neighbouring Central Station. There's the building there that was at the corner of Gibson Street. Absolutely gutted. And the fire started in a vape shop, which was down in the bottom left-hand corner of that picture. And people are saying that it was a battery fire of some kind. Who knows at this stage exactly how it all started? But what I can, and what we can all be grateful for, is that did not spread to further to the right, where you see Central Station, and that grand building over there is indeed the Central Station Hotel. If it had got through somehow the wall between the two buildings, then it would have been a disaster for everybody. As it is, the Central Station was only closed for 3 days. It's now open, is our understanding. We spoke to a structural engineer friend of ours, and we asked, how did that collapse? Because clearly it was not held up by steel. If it had been held up by steel girders, it wouldn't have collapsed quite in that manner. And he was saying that these old buildings were in fact held up by timber, largely timber framed buildings. And there was a lot of space between the walls. And his theory was that if a fire got into a staircase, it would just zip up and burn everything. So basically all the timbers there just crashed down, and as they crashed down, all the masonry came down with it. Although there are some steel girders there. on the first floor. My friend was also telling me that it's very difficult for people who live above shops to be able to get any insurance. And one of the reasons why a lot of these buildings, like the Forsyth building there, was possibly empty above the first floor, or rather above the ground floor, is because they wouldn't be able to get proper insurance for the buildings above a row of shops because of the risk of fire from the shops. Anyway, that was this week, and it's caused considerable traffic problems, of course, because a whole two streets have had to get closed down, two streets that the buses use. So anyway, it seems to be getting sorted now, but that's a ridiculous thing, of course, and we learn that the person who ran the shop owed £10,000 in business rates and were not registered either to sell vapes. And how often is that repeated, not just throughout Glasgow, but indeed throughout Britain, that people are moving into these shops without being properly vetted and without proper registration and without being properly checked. You'd think that the council would have a department, would have a bloke whose job it was just to walk about the streets, going into shops, checking everybody's registered. But apparently that's maybe too 19th century for our modern world to figure out. But I mean, that's what needs to be done, basically. You need to have these departments of people who just check up on stuff, because if you don't check up on stuff, people will take advantage, and before you know it, your city gets burnt down. Anyway, let's say hello. Let's say hello to some of the people tonight. Good evening to Derek. It's time everyone gets involved on the 28th. We'll be speaking about that in a moment, our rally on the 28th. Hi to Oksana and to TC. Good to see TC again. Hi, troops, from Catherine. And Oksana says allegedly the shop was illegally operating. Absolutely. Oksana says the central station roof needs repairing. Well, I would be amazed if it had somehow managed to survive that fire. I would have thought the glass would, I don't know, melt or something, but so there will be parts of that surely do need repairing. Definitely does need looking into, TC. Well, Glasgow has a lot of these Victorian buildings, that's for sure. That's for sure. Hello to Daniel Leinhart. Nice to see you back in again this week, sir. Now, Derek there mentioned the event on the 28th. Now, many of you will know we had been planning. We had been planning to have our event outside the Scottish Parliament. And let me just see if I can upload. I don't think I've uploaded it yet. The message that we got from the Scottish Parliament. Where are we? Now I'm going to get this because I spent some time to download it and now I can't see where it is. Well, would you credit it? Would you credit it? Anyway, let's do all of that again. But basically, we got a message from the Scottish Parliament saying that we couldn't hold the rally on the 28th. And they said it was, oh, here it is. Email received. Let's get this up. Oh, I can't really see that very well. We have recently become aware of social media posts indicating your intention to hold a rally outside the Scottish Parliament on Saturday the 28th. Having reviewed the content of the planned demonstration, we consider that the proposed event would fall out with the Scottish Parliament's protest policy because it is party political in nature and relates to the forthcoming election when specific restrictions apply. The planned date for your event is the 28th of March when these restrictions are in force. And it directed us there to a bit of the Parliament's website of why we might refuse permission. And basically it says there that you can't have a party political demo. So that was news to us, considering that All Under One Banner and Believe in Scotland and so on have had their demos regularly outside the Scottish Parliament. And we did get back to the Parliament and point this out. And they just said something to the effect that, well, that was when previous policy was in place or something like that. But they just sidestepped that one, really. But the one that we can't get around is their claim that there's a restricted period. They didn't tell us what those dates were, but if it's anything like the Electoral Commission's restricted period, it will be the 7th of January until the 7th of May. And they claimed that they weren't going to allow anybody to hold rallies officially anyway on their premises, or their grounds rather. So we said, okay, we don't want to get into trouble with the law. So what we've done is we have rearranged it same day, but it's going to actually be further up the Royal Mile. And this is actually going to work out to our benefit, because outside St. Giles, the Believe in Scotland official SNP march, which is going to be led by John Swinney, is gathering outside St. Giles in what's called Parliament Square. So we said, well, let's just do the same. You know, they can have one side of Parliament Square at one side of St. Giles. We can have our rally at the other side of St. Giles, and we can start it a little bit earlier. And when they set off, we'll be right beside them as their march passes us. And so that'll actually work out better. It'll have much better optics, and the media will be much more interested in that. And so what we're doing is we're gathering at 11 o'clock on Saturday, the 28th of March, and our rally will begin at 11:30, and it'll last for at least an hour and a half or so. Now, the Believe in Scotland people, they're gathering at 11:30 and leaving at 12. So during that period that we're there, we'll be seeing them, and we'll also be seeing them pass us. We've put out that new graphic there. Rally at St. Giles on the Royal Mile, Saturday, the 28th of March, 2026, 11 a.m. for 11:30 start. And that's going to be a good rally, and it's going to be right beside where, as I say, the official SNP rally and march is beginning. They'll be setting off down the Royal Mile. We'll be staying where we are to finish our rally. And it's much more public. It's probably easier to get to for a lot of people. And we're also working with the authorities to ensure that everybody's happy and that the police are happy and all that kind of stuff. So it's going to be a good day. So please get along to it. As I mentioned, John Swinney himself is going to be leading the march. And so we'll no doubt have something to say to him. And we've got actually one or two good banners as well. One of our colleagues has initially created that. 19 years of misery, Swinney out, SNP out now, enough is enough. And they've translated that into a banner, actually, which has just arrived, looking very good there. So that will be getting held in a prominent position, and no doubt people will be taking some photographs of that. I like that phrase, 19 years of misery. That's a good one. So yeah, that's definitely for the media, that one. Okay. Good stuff. So see you all then. somebody's saying, what's that flag in the background? Well, this is the British royal crest as used in Scotland. And what you see there is the two lion rampants, and one of the three lions in England, the lion rampant is in there, and those are the lions. But in Scotland, the lion rampant is predominant. I really like this. I really like this flag. We've got a couple of these in the office, and we'll be taking them along to the rally on the 28th as well. Good. Now, folks, in 15 minutes, we've got our friend Jason Lloyd Davies of United in Britain No Cymru, which is a grassroots campaigning organisation campaigning to keep Wales as part of the United Kingdom. He's coming up at 7:30. Please do stick around for that. Let's say hello to any more people who have come in. Catherine says, get yourself to Holyrood, Scottish Patriots. Stephen says, nice flag. There you go, Oksana. I've just given you your answer. It's the Royal Arms as used in Scotland. Hello to Robert and to Derek from Armadale. Daniel, the Lionheart, says, could you post the link for that banner making company if you don't mind? I don't have the link for it because it was a colleague who created it. But maybe the colleague who created it, if he's willing to do so, can post the link in the thread, and we'll read it out. Right. Well, something I want to talk about, okay, is, and I want to give some credit here to a certain person that not everybody will be on board with, but our girl, Shabana Mahmood, is knocking it out the park these days. She really is. And people say, Alistair, but she's a Labour person. And why would you want to give any credit to what she's doing? Well, the thing is, the way I look at it is, in politics, you should say, what are your values? What do you believe in? And how do you make those happen in the world? And then you look around and you see who's doing stuff that moves things in the direction that we want. And if there's somebody doing things that you might disagree with on lots of stuff, but is doing certain things which are definitely good and moving things in the right direction, then the least you can do is, give them a shout out, say, well done, encourage them in their correct actions. And she has really taken a broom to our totally useless asylum system and is beginning to put out stuff that's really, really revolutionary in the sense that never been done in all the years that we've been joined up to the 1951 UN Refugee Convention. I mean, look at this headline. Right to permanent asylum scrapped in the UK. That is major. That's major, because here's how it works at the moment. Somebody comes in off the boat. They're called an asylum seeker. They spend time in a hotel while everything is being investigated to the extent that the authorities can even investigate it. And if they're given official refugee status, that is, if their claim is accepted and they become a refugee officially, then they've won the golden ticket. They really have, because as soon as you get refugee status, that's essentially permanent if you want it to be permanent. And as soon as you get it, You will also get full access to all benefits and social housing on exactly the same terms as a British citizen, as you and I. And if you want, you can just stay on benefits. If you can get yourself accommodation, you can stay on benefits and housing benefits, hang about for 5 years, and provided you don't break the law or do anything foolish, then you can apply for indefinite leave to remain, and you will get it. You will get indefinite leave to remain after 5 years. And if you even want, after a further year, you can apply for British citizenship. And that won't really give you very much more than you've already got, but it will give you a passport. So that's basically permanent refugee status. If you successfully claim for asylum off the boat, you can be here forever at the courtesy and at the expense of the British taxpayer. Now, all of this seems now to be ending after decades and decades. And what's pushed her into it? Well, obviously the fear of the far right, the fear that reform, which is not even far right, but the fear that reform are going to be taking all the Labour votes. So she's actually starting to institute sensible policies, and I guess she can do it without too much problem because she is of immigrant ancestry herself. So in that sense, she's inoculated a bit against accusations of racism. So basically, just to quickly run through this, Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, will change the rules so that migrants arriving in the UK after today, which is the 2nd of March, will only be eligible for temporary refugee status as part of sweeping reforms to deter what they're calling here illegal migrants. Under the changes, migrants and their children granted asylum will have their right to remain in the UK reviewed every 30 months. If their country is deemed safe enough for them to return, they will be sent back. Only children who arrive in the UK unaccompanied will be exempt. As I've just said, it explains here, until now, successful asylum seekers have been granted refugee status for 5 years and allowed to bring their families to the UK. They then got almost automatic free permanent settlement with continued access to benefits and housing. In further changes, such refugees will have to wait up to 20 years before they can apply to settle in the UK. 20 years is slightly different from 5 years. And up to 30 years if they arrived via small boats across the Channel or by claiming asylum after overstaying work, student, or visitor visas. Furthermore, the right of refugees to bring over their families has been halted until a new system is introduced. This will require them to demonstrate they can financially support anyone who joins them in the UK in the same way as Britain's bringing in foreign spouses and children. These are really quite revolutionary changes, and if she gets that through, which she probably will, then she is building the system and she's acclimatizing people to these new changes, so that so that's all good. It's all moving in the right way. And if reform is still able to keep up its momentum by 2029, then it will find that a lot of the architecture for its further proposals will already have been built. Obviously, reform will be concerned that those changes actually reduce the levels of immigration to the point where it's no longer seen as a necessary issue. That's what Shabana Mahmood will be hoping. But anyway, fair play to her for actually doing that. And furthermore, this is an interesting one. Migrant families will be paid $40,000 to leave. What's this about? This is going to be something that's, quote, targeted at families whose initial asylum application has been rejected, have failed in their appeal against their removal and have no outstanding live claims. So if asylum seekers do not take up the offer, which is 10,000 per person, to leave the country and go back or to go elsewhere, then they will be forcibly removed. So a family of 4 could get up to £40,000 to leave the country. And people say, well, that's an awful lot. But wait till you see how much it costs to keep them here. That's the thing. And it's undoubtedly a saving. It says here, it would save the taxpayer as much as 20 million as it would cost the state some £158,000 to house a family of 4 in a UK hotel every year, potentially indefinitely. So if you can give them 40,000 to leave, money in hand, could you just leave now, please? Then that could actually be very, very useful. It says here, quote, this is Shabana Mahmood saying, quote, the families, this is a Telegraph saying the families will only receive their payments of 10,000 via a prepaid card once they have returned to their home countries. And apparently there's several hundred families that have been targeted with this offer as soon as possible. In fact, it says 150 families who are all in hotels received texts yesterday morning, that would be on the 5th of March, giving them 7 days to make their decision about whether to accept the offers. Interesting. Well, we'll see how all that goes. But goodness me, all of these policies were suggested in our book, Protect Our Country, a big book for the Union, Volume 2. We suggested all of these policies. We even sent a copy to Ms. Mahmood's office and would like to think that somebody skim read it or simply checked out the chapter titles, which would explain all these kind of policies fairly well. And you can get that simply by going to Amazon and searching for Protect Our Country. And it's an excellent read, Protect Our Country, Policies to Stop Mass Immigration. Now, in a couple of minutes, we're going to bring in our new guest. Let's just look at one or two comments. Well, I mean, Stephen, you're right. I mean, obviously her end game is multiculturalism. That's for sure. She's not anything other than that. But at the same time, who else is in power who can actually make substantial changes in the direction that we need? But obviously, we must always be careful with about everybody. But my view is to give support to people on the issues that I happen to agree with, even though one's got to be careful about how much you sign up to it, as it were. Derek says, end and deport. Oksana worries about the judiciary, of course. Will the judiciary stop much of this deportation? Well, very possibly so. That's another thing that she's got to get through, because these things can get held up. However, at the end of the day, if the government makes the law that says, for example, no appeals, and that's something that we advocate here, no appeals, or at least just one appeal, but cut down on appeals. If you make that the law, then the judiciary can't actually refuse, because it's the law created by the parliament. Hi to British Legends. And thank you for your comments. A force for good, always for good, no retreat, no surrender. Excellent. Well, let's say hello, folks, to Jason Lloyd Davies of United in Britain, no Cymru, who is our guest tonight. Say hello to Jason.
Good evening, Alistair. Good to meet you earlier, and yeah, nice to be on your show.
Good to speak to you finally on the show. Very glad that you could make it, and looking forward to hearing all about Wales. And I think the first thing that I would like just to ask you is to explain your name, the United in Britain, no Cymru. How did that come about, and when did it come about?
Yeah, so the United in Britain is the campaign we set up. It was originally myself and a colleague of mine, and the no exclamation mark Cymru means no to separation. And it's interesting that your opponents tried to twist the. I'm sure you've gone through it where they'll try to say, yeah, but yes, Cymru's more pro Wales and no exclamation mark Cymru. But everything has context, and no Cymru, as we've said at many of the agricultural shows, it means no to separation. And even some Welsh speakers, when they picked up our leaflet, saw it was in Welsh and English, so Welsh Cymraeg, and they said, "Oh my God, we didn't think you would have it. You people that want to keep the union would have Welsh in your leaflets." So we had numerous conversations, but going back to why we created the non-profit movement, it became crystal clear with the propaganda that came from what we term the separatists, who want to break up one of the most successful democracies in the world. We've never pretended that Britain is perfect. However, we've got to help, the United Kingdom, of Great Britain, and Northern Ireland. But we've done a lot of good things in the world, despite the claims of certain people that say everything we've done is bad. So the context was just myself and a colleague, and we said we wanted to set up a counter campaign so that young people or people from all backgrounds could realize that, look, there's someone fighting for their corner, or what I call the silent majority.
Yes, good. Well, I'm glad that you did, because these the Yes Cymru people, if they're anything like the the similar ones in Scotland, then they're certainly very noisy, and they love to exaggerate as well. Do they? Well, I know that they do. They go on marches and things like that. Is the Yes Cymru movement at the moment very strong? Is it well known? Is it very popular in Wales at the moment?
So originally, what I would class it as there wasn't a level playing field in Wales, and Plaid Cymru, the political party, was failing to make big inroads into what they term the non-Welsh speaking heartlands. And there are people in the No Cymru movement that are members that speak Cymraeg. So we've managed to get around that so-called nonsense that they're against the Welsh language. But the thing is, they were very, very noisy. They had no one speaking against them. They were going into sports grounds. And basically, a lot of the stuff they were saying to the youth, young people especially, was Wales only gets crumbs, and Wales is oppressed, despite the fact that public spending is higher in Wales, and quite a bit as well. I mean, I looked during COVID at the ONS figures, and it was substantially more, around about 16%, if my memory serves me right, higher per adult in Wales than the rest of Britain.
Sure.
So yeah, so there are a lot of nonsense out there that needed to be tackled, and I think from what I've heard, they've had some internal battles. Their central committees have resigned several times over allegations of bullying and misconduct, and yeah, so we've learned a lot about how they operate.
Yes. Well, I noticed that they've been holding, since 2019, they've been holding 2 or 3 marches every year. And we've been following them as much as we can from up here to see what numbers they claim and what numbers we can verify. And we've got a graphic that we'll just put up. And we don't have all the numbers. We've got only just maybe half of them. Here we go, Welsh marches. Let's get rid of that banner. So they began in Cardiff. We didn't have anything for that. Carnarvon. In Merthyr Tydfil, though, they said they had got 5.3 thousand. I don't know where they got that figure from, but we counted from a video 2,700. And then they were quiet during the period that everything shut down. And then they came back in 2022 in Wrexham claiming 8,000 on a march, but we had a good video of that, and it was 1,668, if you want the precise total that we counted. So again, they're exaggerating before times. We don't have anything until 2025 when they and the police said up to 7,000, but there wasn't even 1,000 on it, and it took 9 minutes to pass, and we counted 923. So that was another serious exaggeration, and that was in Barry. And then then they had another one in Rill, and they said 2,000 people, but we counted 750. So they've learned their lesson to exaggerate anyway.
Well, interesting you mentioned that, because the Cardiff rally, we walked the route the night before, and then the following morning, several of us, or one or two, were embedded on the march, so they could gather information, and we saw them all arrive at Wetherspoons in Cardiff, and I can only tell you what I heard. And one of the directors of Yes Cymru said, I think we're going to get a low turnout because of the train strike.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, we then heard that Associated Press gave them, they actually thought about 5,500 were their maximum. And one of the council officials said, no way was there 10,000, when I think it was one of the employees of the council that actually witnessed it, that from their street cleaning division. So we saw the report in Wales Online at the time, and it was written by no other than Will Haywood. And interestingly enough, Wales Online quoted 10,000, and yet I thought, where did they get that figure from? And then I read that Will Haywood had written a book on Welsh independence, and he's been at several of the marches. And UIB, United in Britain, once put in a complaint about Wales Online to the Press Complaints Commission due to what we perceived as biased and inaccurate and therefore false reporting.
Well, quite right. Because they'll just lie. I mean, if the one before that they said 8,000, then they'll always want to just keep building on that. And so with Cardiff, which was the very next one, After Wrexham, they would say 10,000. But I mean, if it was a quarter of that, I'd be quite surprised. So we've got the elections coming up on the 7th of May, and how do you, without even telling us who you're voting for, how do you see it playing out? I mean, do you think that Labour are going to lose to Reform? Do you think that Plaid is going to come through on top? I mean, what's your sort of sense of things at the moment?
So, speaking to several of my colleagues, and essentially they believe, and I've got it from a reliable source from one of the Labour people down in a pub was overheard. He's actually someone quite senior within Labour. He said that he thought Labour were going to lose a substantial number of seats. And one of our members was sat on a different table in that pub and heard the conversation. So he thought that this was this Labour official who believed that Labour would be down to between 8 and 11 seats. I think they're currently on 30. Conservatives have got, I think, 16. And so they expect to hemorrhage votes, and most of those are switching, to the best of my knowledge, over to either Reform or to Plaid. Many Welsh Labour voters have decided to abandon a lifetime of voting habit, and from their grandfathers, etc., throughout the generations. Some are going to vote for Plaid, but others are going to go to Reform.
Yeah. Well, just bringing up the situation here in 2021, the last election, as you say, Labour had 30, Plaid had 13, Lib Dems coming in there at 1, Conservatives at 16, and UKIP, which had previously 7, just got wiped out there in 2021. So Labour really quite dominant there, but there's a different dynamic going on now because the whole electoral system is changing. Previously there was 60 members of the Senate, 40 elected. In fact, we've got the old map there. 40 elected under first past the post, and the remaining 20 elected. Here we are. The remaining 20 elected in the regions there, which is the map on the right-hand side, and there's 5 regions. Now that's all changing in a major way. They've gone up to 96 MSPs, members of the Welsh Assembly. So that's from 60 to 96. Is incredible. Yeah. I mean, why are they doing that?
Well, interestingly enough, there's been no public vote on this, and I heard a statement or a comment from the Labour MS for Swansea, Mike Hedges, and even the Conservatives agreed with him. And the statement was, Plaid just want to keep on going, keep devolving everything until there's nothing left to devolve. So Plaid have been the drivers with Welsh Labour. And of course, unfortunately, Welsh Labour have allowed them to dominate when they should have basically, if it'd been me running the Welsh Parliament, I wouldn't have dealt with Plaid Cymru. And even many of their supporters have told us at the shows that they feel betrayed the agricultural side, some of the constituency in North Wales where they voted Plaid all their lives because of Cymraeg, because of the Welsh language and the perception that Plaid were their bread and butter. And now they feel abandoned. Many people don't want the expansion and the huge cost associated with the increase from 60 to 96, with massive cuts in health, education failing, transport infrastructure poor when you compare to the rest of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. So Plaid's only resonate, the only reason, or the only thing they care about is separation.
Yeah.
And wasted money like they did on the so-called Commission on Constitutional Change. So a lot of wasteful projects, all part of the cooperation agreement with Welsh Labour.
Yeah, slowly chipping away at things. And what's remarkable about this new thing as well, they've gone up to from 60 to 96, but they've also scrapped first past the post entirely. And it's now, Wales is now going to be 16 regions, super regions, each electing 6 members of the Welsh Parliament. And there they are. There's a 16 regions, and it's going to be elected, my understanding is, by the D'Hondt method of proportional representation, which is the method that existed and it continues to exist in Scotland for the second ballot and was previously in Wales for the second ballot. So Welsh people will just simply have one vote, and they'll vote for a regional MSP, and there'll be 6 elected in each region. I presume they'll think that this is somehow going to encourage people to turn out to vote. I mean, how do you see it democratically speaking?
I mean, I personally don't think there's any democratic mandate for either increasing the numbers to the Senate. I think if there'd been a vote to increase it for every person in Wales, and secondly, the constituencies in Wales, we're bilingual, and there's been several comments from even Welsh speakers who think it's wrong to have only put the constituencies in Welsh, Cymraeg. And, so in terms of a democratic mandate, I think there is a zero legitimacy for the change.
Yes. Well, here's what you're referring to there. The official names of these regions are all going to be in Welsh. So that's the 16 there with most of them down there in the southeast of Wales. But if you're not a Welsh speaker, even in Wales, but if you're not a Welsh speaker in the rest of Britain looking in on that, that's extremely excluding. I mean, I would have trouble even pronouncing some of these words. I'm not a Welsh speaker, so I would, I just feel excluded really when people use a language that's not a common language for the rest of the country. I don't know how that's going to go down. That's like the official names that will be mentioned on election night. There's no, as you said, that really should be bilingual. Unless you've got a deliberate agenda to exclude people who don't speak Welsh, and I think that's taken us back to Plaid. I mean, that has to be them doing that, and for some reason, Labour has agreed to it.
I think because Labour had no majority, and when you get somebody like Mike Hedges, the member of the Senate for I think it's Swansea East, when he mentioned that Plaid want to devolve everything, really all Plaid want is to separate Wales from the rest of Britain. That's their only agenda. And yet they've stated that in the first term, if they became the majority party, they wouldn't campaign for a referendum. Well, I do not believe them. And given the past promise by Adam Price to on an interview that they would not support a Labour-led administration, and yet 8 months later, they did the exact opposite. So how can you place any trust whatsoever in Plaid Cymru?
Yeah. Do you think, though, that perhaps the problems that Labour is having at the British national level, do you think that's more likely to benefit Plaid, or do you think that will benefit Reform?
I mean, I've been told in the South Wales valleys, because several of my friends live up in Fronda, I know people up in Gwynedd, and even people who speak daily through the medium of Welsh, Cymraeg, are going to vote for Reform.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not a member of any political party myself. However, I see that some of the votes from Labour, because they want to punish Labour, they're going to vote Reform and Plaid. But many of them forget that Plaid Cymru stand for open borders,
Mm-hmm.
net zero. In fact, the sad situation in Port Talbot with the steelworks, Plaid jumped on the bandwagon and said they would, it was all the British government's fault, and yet they're the ones that have been pushing net zero. So some of the voters are not aware of Plaid Cymru's policies, and one or two gave us an interview saying, they were going to vote Plaid, but they didn't want unlimited immigration, and yet that's exactly what Plaid Cymru stand for. And have you ever heard the word? They're the arch experts of, they're like the real chameleons in the political world, and they're great. They're the fantastic chameleons of the political world, because Plaid will tell you anything. And they also stated, Plaid, that the nation as sanctuary is not devolved. And that's true. Immigration isn't devolved. But guess who's been pushing the nation sanctuary in Wales? No other than Plaid Cymru. Unlimited, and in fact, on the interview, Ffrin Ap Jones, the current leader of Plaid Cymru, who took over from Adam Price after all the toxic misogyny allegations, he stated, this is Ffrin Ap, well, there's no such thing as illegal immigration. And yet, many of the people in some of the constituencies are not aware, because they don't all read social media. They're not aware.
Yeah. It's completely the same in Scotland as well. Huge numbers of people who maybe can't be expected to keep up with daily politics, but don't really understand the basics of what the political parties believe. And in Scotland, we've got the same thing. A lot of people who maybe don't want mass immigration will vote SNP, not even realising that John Swinney wants more immigrants to come into Scotland, not less, literally more, and he campaigns for that. And so I can imagine in Wales as well, it's just the absolute same ridiculous story. And we'll just have to see how it all plays out. But I think Labour are they are gonna lose votes. But who is the beneficiary of that? We'll see. Hopefully, it's not going to be the separatists. Well, thanks for coming on the show. Now, look, you've got an X account, which is quite busy. It's x.com/UIB campaign.
That's right, yeah.
United in Britain that stands campaign. For United in Britain campaign. And you've also got a website, which is nocymru.co.uk, and people can see your work there. One or two comments coming in. Stephen Bailey here says, Neil Kinnock has admitted that Labour's legislative devolutionary settlement was a mistake, as it's just enabled the rise to power of separatism. I'm sure you would agree with that. And fiscal transfers to Wales are vital to help Wales fill the gap between income and outgoings, and that's right. And it's no harm to Wales, but it's like Scotland. It's a big area with the population just in certain parts of it, and it does take a lot of money to keep the whole thing connected through roads and other means of communication and so on. So there's no shame in getting those fiscal transfers when you need it. And that's the point, as we always say, of the union, is that the richer parts or the more prosperous parts can help out the others with tax transfers and grants and stuff like that. That's the point of the union, is to share. We've always been strong about that, not to hoard your wealth and say you're not getting it because you're 50 miles west of me or 50 miles south of me. I'm going to keep the wealth to myself. No, I mean, the point of the union has always been sharing. And long may that continue. So thank you very much, Jason. We must get you back on perhaps after the election, when the dust has settled and we can get your thoughts on where the ground is lying for heading onwards.
Pleasure, Alistair. Yeah, thank you very, very much for the invite. And yeah, it'd be interesting times in coming just before the 7th of May. That's when the vote's going to happen, and when we either face a nice bright future or things could be very rocky indeed on the.
Well, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed it's all going to work out well.
Thank you very much, Alistair. Cheers.
See you again. Cheers.
Thanks very much. Cheers. Bye.
Good stuff. That's Jason from United in Britain campaign. Please follow him if you're on X. Good stuff. Now, we've got some news to mention before we close. We're running a new crowdfunder, and that's been a kind of a necessity because we weren't able to get in what we needed at the Yo Britannia crowdfunder, and we do have a busy couple of months coming up. So because of the busy couple of months coming up prior to the 7th of May, we have necessitated a new crowdfunder, which is crowdfunder.co.uk/spring 2026. It's the first time we've done the spring crowdfunder, and it is going to run not for 4 weeks, but actually for 8 weeks. So we're starting it today. It's already live at crowdfunder.co.uk/spring 2026. And it's going to run until the 6th of May, which is the eve of the Scottish election. And the thing is, with the crowdfunder campaign now, money comes out weekly. So if you donate, the crowdfunder company will give it to us a week later, so it can act as a means for ensuring a small regular income for our work that we're wanting to do between now and then, one of which, of course, is our rally on the 28th of March outside St Giles, 11 for 11:30. Another, as we mentioned last week, is to help our friend Niall with his anti-SNP billboard campaign. And so we'd like to raise money for that as well. And so a proportion of the money that comes in via the crowdfunder.co.uk/spring 2026 will go to Niall's work as well with his billboard campaign. A proportion of it will go to the SNP Out rally on the 28th of March. And the other proportion of that will just keep us going here, keep our organisation going over those busy 8 weeks, so that we can publish daily and broadcast weekly. And so please do check that out, folks. We'll be pushing that over the next couple of months, in the final 8 weeks, as we head into one of Scotland's most important elections. And that's a graphic there that was designed for us today by a friend of ours. Help us to defend our precious union. Springtime crowdfunder. .co.uk/spring 2026. Okay, thank you. Great. Well, talking about being busy, we're not going to be able to have a broadcast next week because we're going to have a very busy week next week. More about that in the future. But for now, we'll see you again, and it just remains for me to say, God bless the United Kingdom and God save the King. See you next week.